All right, here we go. What if the most profound philosophical insights were not whispered from some dusty ivory tower, but roared from the very precipice of madness, demanding not just your attention, oh no, but your complete, utter transformation? Tonight, we dive headfirst back into Friedrich Nietzsche's Ecce Homo. We are targeting sections 2 and 3 of that unbelievably, audaciously titled chapter, Why I Write Such Good Books. Now, this is not your grandma's autobiography, folks. This is a war zone. A battlefield where Nietzsche, in this masterpiece subtitled How One Becomes What One Is, declares total war on complacency. He is not just defining his earth-shattering philosophy, he is calling out the kind of reader, courageous enough, perhaps foolhardy enough, to actually grapple with it. We are about to unravel how he meticulously crafts this persona, this world historical monster, and what that audacious claim means for you, should you dare to pick up his work. So, Nietzsche bursts into section 2 with that signature flourish of his. He lays claim to this globe-spanning ultra-elite readership, select intelligences and proven characters. He has got them in Vienna, St. Petersburg, Paris, New York, everywhere, he boasts, except, and you have to love this, Germany, those flatlands of Europe. One almost expects him to add, and they all subscribe to my newsletter. This power move, this immediate establishment of an international, truly discerning audience, set starkly against the pointed, almost surgical exclusion of his homeland. Well, it sets quite the stage, would not you say? It is not just about book sales. Oh no. It is about an intellectual vibration, a resonance, or, more pointedly, the profound lack of it. I must admit, when I first read this, years ago, the sheer, unadulterated audacity of his self-praise was almost, well, let us just say it took a while to see past the posture to the philosophical work being done through that posture. Then he pivots, and quite charmingly I might add, to his non-readers. These are the ordinary folk, like those Turinese peddler women, whose faces, he says, just light up when they see him, offering him their very best grapes. This is the extent to which you have to be a philosopher, he declares. Now, what on earth are we to make of this juxtaposition, the select intelligences over here, and the spontaneous, raw affection of the common person over there? It hints, does it not, at a philosophy that, for all its proclaimed loftiness, craves a kind of unmediated, almost visceral affirmation, an affirmation that bypasses all those intellectual gatekeepers of, say, German academia. He feels more kinship, he implies, with the Poles, the French, among the Slavs. He even notes a charming Russian woman would instantly know where he belongs. This is not mere geography, people. It is an alignment with perceived cultural sensibilities, a certain esprit, a vivacity, a lightness he throws into sharp contrast with German solemnity, German ponderousness. To think German, to feel German, I am capable of anything, but this is too much for me, he laments, almost theatrically. Do not you think? His old philology professor, Ritschl, apparently found his academic articles absurdly gripping, like a Parisian novelist, a fascinating little window into Nietzsche's early stylistic fire, even in the most arid of disciplines. And this notion of esprit, this captivating, utterly un-German spice, it leads him to that infamous, thunderous claim, I am the anti-jackass par excellence, which makes me a world historical monster. I am, in Greek, and not just Greek, the Antichrist. Whoa! Antichrist. This, of course, is one of Nietzsche's most deliberately incendiary, most widely and wildly misunderstood declarations. It is absolutely crucial, critical, to see this not as some literal embrace of a demonic, pitchfork-wielding identity, but as a profoundly symbolic position. He is planting his flag as the ultimate challenger, the grand disruptor of received values, particularly Christian morality, which he saw as fundamentally life-denying. a vampire sucking the vitality from existence. But let us push this even further, shall we? This Antichrist is not merely anti-Christianity. It is a structural stance, a war machine against any ossified system of belief that deadens the human spirit or dares to level human potential. It is the primal scream of no to comforting illusions, to the long ears, his words, of uncritical, sheep-like acceptance. Think of it as a kind of universal solvent for dogma, performative unmasking that aims to dismantle not just one idol, but the very mechanism of idol worship lodged deep within the human psyche. This is an immense, far-reaching claim about the philosopher's role, no, duty, as a fundamental disruptor of our established cognitive and moral frameworks. And here I am, still struggling to get my footnotes right, while he is off being a world historical monster. It is humbling, really. Moving to section 3, Nietzsche cranks up the volume. He escalates the demands on his reader, on you. His writings, he dares to claim, spoil your taste. You cannot stand other books anymore, philosophy books in particular. Oh, the horror, the sheer horror, to be unable to return to the gentle, soporific embrace of, say, a perfectly well-behaved, utterly predictable Kantian treatise after a potent dose of Nietzsche. This spoiling he presents not as a loss, but as an entry into a noble and delicate world. An honor to be earned, and again with that characteristic jab, explicitly not for Germans, in his polemical, almost caricature-like sense, but those who can enter, those who possess, by virtue of the height of their will, they experience true ecstasies of learning. He paints himself as an intrepid explorer of uncharted psychic terrain. I come from heights that no bird has ever reached. I know abysses where no foot has ever strayed. His books, consequently, disrupt sleep. This is not philosophy as a cozy intellectual exercise, folks. This is an existential encounter, a white-knuckle journey to the very limits of human experience. These books, he hammers on, are the proudest, most refined, sometimes even reaching what he calls cynicism. And here, we must be careful. We should understand cynicism not in its modern debased sense of mere sneering negativity, but perhaps in its ancient philosophical armor, a radical, often shocking, unmasking of convention and hypocrisy, all to get at a brutally hard truth. To conquer them, to truly wrestle with these texts, you need delicate fingers as well as the bravest fists. He then fires off a list of disqualifications, a veritable rogues gallery of unsuitability. Infirmity of the soul, dyspepsia, so mind your digestion if you plan to tackle Zarathustra after a heavy lunch. Poverty, the stale air of a soul. Cowardice, uncleanliness, secret vengefulness of the intestines. His words, he boasts, will drive all your bad instincts into your face. This is a visceral, almost medicalized vision of reading, is it not? Where the text itself acts as a diagnostic tool, or perhaps a powerful purgative. He describes the reactions, oh, the pitiful reactions, of those who fail this monumental test. Friends who suddenly become impersonal, congratulating him on a greater cheerfulness of tone, while deftly, oh so deftly, avoiding the actual, explosive content. The beautiful souls, those liars through and through, they dismiss his books as utterly beneath them. A beautiful logic, he sneers, dripping with contempt. The cattle, his pure Germans, well, they might agree. Sometimes. It is a devastating gallery of inadequate readers, each one unwittingly revealing their own deep limitations in their engagement, or rather, their lack of engagement, with his electrifying work. And then we come to his pronouncement on feminism. I regard every type of feminism, espoused by people, men as well as women, as the closing of a door. You will never enter this labyrinth of daring knowledge. Now, this is understandably a profoundly problematic, a deeply jarring passage for contemporary readers. It is absolutely vital to contextualize this grenade. Nietzsche is not, I firmly believe, making some blanket, misogynistic statement against women's intellectual capacities. His genuine admiration for figures like Lou Andreas Salome and his earlier, rather charming comment about women thinking he understands them better suggests a far more complex, nuanced picture. Rather, what he likely targets is feminism here, are specific movements or intellectual currents of his time that, in his highly critical view, promoted what he scornfully considered a slave morality, an ethic of resentment, or a leveling, homogenizing tendency that ran entirely counter to his fierce emphasis on individual self-overcoming and the relentless pursuit of daring knowledge. The closing of a door is, for him, a structural, almost inevitable consequence. If one adopts what he perceives as a resentment-based or herd-oriented ideology, then the kind of radical, self-interrogating, abyss-facing thought he champions, well, it becomes terrifyingly inaccessible. This does not excuse the language, not for a moment, nor its undeniable potential for misuse. But it reframes the critique as part and parcel of his broader philosophical war. A war against any system that, in his eyes, diminishes the blazing drive for individual greatness and the sheer courage to confront profoundly uncomfortable truths. It is a harsh, undeniably elitist, and certainly contestable claim about the absolute preconditions for engaging with his specific, demanding philosophical project. His ideal reader, by stark contrast, is a monster of courage and curiosity, supple, cunning, cautious, a born adventurer and discoverer. This is not some passive recipient of information, sleepily taking notes. No, this is an active, almost predatory intellect, fully capable of navigating the most treacherous intellectual terrain. He concludes by quoting Zarathustra, who speaks only to the bold seekers, experimenters, riddle-drunk, twilight-glad, who do not want to fumble for a thread with a cowardly hand, and you hate to guess where you can discern. This is a clarion call to a very, very specific kind of intellectual and spiritual constitution. It is quite the job description, is it not? Makes you wonder if anyone ever truly feels they fit the bill, or if the description itself is part of the provocation, part of the magnificent spoiling of our intellectual comfort. So, Nietzsche, in these explosive sections of Why I Write Such Good Books, does not just present ideas. He hurls a challenge, a direct dare, right at you, the reader. He demands a certain constitution, a fierce willingness to be spoiled for lesser, tamer things. And controversially, yes, he positions himself as the Antichrist and unleashes his critique of what he terms feminism, all in service of forging a reader truly capable of confronting terrifyingly uncomfortable truths and embracing the breathtaking vistas of daring knowledge. His self-assessment, however, does not stop at the kind of reader he seeks, oh no. In our next session, as we continue our plunge into sections 4 and 5 of Why I Write Such Good Books from Ecce Homo, Nietzsche will turn his incisive and often wildly provocative gaze onto the very tools of his incendiary trade. His unique art of style, his audacious claim to be a psychologist without equal, and his deeply controversial, electrifyingly Dionysian understanding of women and love. Prepare yourselves. Prepare for an even deeper dive into the labyrinthine mind of a philosopher who passionately believed his words could reshape the world, one reader and one perfectly crafted sentence at a time.